Welcome back to another episode of the Adversity Advantage. I'm your host, Doug Bopst, and today's guest is my good friend Jenna Willis. And Jenna and I met several years ago working out together at Gabby Reece's house, and she's also a colleague and a trainer. And Jenna's complete mind-body approach to wellness, as well as her results, have gained her a reputation as one of the hottest rising celebrity trainers. Her impressive client roster includes YouTube sensation Liza Koshy, reality queen Lala Kent, and pop music icon Camila Cabello, to name a few. In an industry obsessed with perfection, Jenna embraces the awkward, allowing those she trains to focus on enjoying working out rather than stressing about it. As a former Division I volleyball player, Jenna uses her background in fitness and uplifting teamwork mentality to help both herself and her clients cope with anxiety and gain peace of mind. And I think you guys are going to enjoy this conversation a lot. It's a little different as we engage in kind of a friendly dialogue and talk about kind of the awkward moment in how we met. So without further ado, let's get this conversation going and welcome Jenna Willis to the Adversity Advantage podcast. Jenna Willis.
Ooh, baby. Is there like a clapping thing that happens now? Do you have a laugh track? I'm kidding.
The only live audience I have is Shadow. I don't know if he's still chilling on the back ottoman. I leave him there for just the scenic look so people can admire how great of a dog he is and how chill he is during these interviews, which is kind of shocking.
That is shocking. That's amazing.
Yeah, and what else is amazing is I think that this is going to be a little bit of a different interview than I typically do, in the sense where we know each other very well, I would say, at this point. And a lot of times people will come on the show, I really don't know them much other than the few hours or a few days or whatever I've spent researching them and getting to know them. Like, you and I have spent time together.
Serious time, actually.
Serious time.
Some serious time.
In pretty vulnerable states, I think, at least for me, if you will. So let's talk about how we met. So you and I met
Okay.
I had Gabby Reece on the podcast, who was a favorite for many of my listeners, and Gabby invited me to come do a pool workout at her house. And when I got the offer, I was like, yes, let's do it. And I had no idea, other than like seeing a few videos of what she was doing with the pool workout on YouTube. I didn't really know how much what it entailed. And then I started looking more into it, and I was like, oh my gosh, I got to train for this. And I was kind of nervous because I was like, man, I think I'm in good shape, but like, am I? And so, make a long story short, I end up obviously doing it. I fly out. I coordinate a few other things to kind of make the trip like a bit longer or whatever. And I get there, and it's like me, her, Laird, her husband, maybe some of their kids were there, and then maybe like a guy who was like an up and coming surfer was staying with them, and then it was you. And it was me and you with Gabby, because Gabby like knew that we hadn't really done it before, and she was going to kind of guide us through the workout. And I'm like terrified now because I'm like, gosh, I got this other girl in the pool with me, and I knew you were a trainer. And I was like, man, and she's like good looking, and I'm like kind of like nervous because I'm like, I don't want to embarrass myself, right? And then I like get up like kind of close to you, but like not too close to like where I thought I was supposed to be, and you were like, back off. And I was just like, whoa, like, and you're like, I'm sorry, I'm from Jersey. And
yeah,
it was such a fun experience though, because I think, like, as I'm sure you learned, you put yourself in these uncomfortable situations that you really don't know how they're going to turn out, but you just have this gut feeling that you're going to end up becoming a better version of yourself because of it. And then you end up walking away with life lessons, fitness lessons, and even like, relationships, friendships like you and I have. So what was for you, somebody who had at that point been in the fitness space for a long time and worked with some high level people in the entertainment space, what was that experience like for you?
Honestly, similar to yours. I didn't know what to expect, like stepping into that at all. I had heard some really cool things. I had literally run into Gabby a couple weeks prior, exchanged a few words, because I don't know if you even know this, but I played Division I volleyball.
I did know that.
Yeah. So Gabby, being the elite volleyballist, I may have made that word up, that she is, I was already kind of excited. And honestly, I have no shame when it comes to introducing myself to people, especially if it's someone that I admire in an industry that I've been in. And we started chatting, and she invited me over to the house. And I was like, you know what? I am not a great swimmer. I've never been a great swimmer in my life, but I thought it'd be a really cool experience and to get to know some new people. So similar to you, I had some trepidation going in there, but I was like, you know what? I'm going to give it my all. This is worth the experience. It's worth the new techniques when it comes to fitness and training. And you were in my fucking way when we were swimming. I mean, it's really that simple. I have 3 older brothers, right? So I go in it whenever I go into anything that's fitness oriented, I give it my all. There's not a question. Like if I say I'm going to do something, I go in and I go in deep. And I think we were treading. We were like in one of the first things that they were trying to teach us. And I was like, I'm not going to look bad. And this dude's in my way and he's going to make me look worse. So that was my experience.
Well, and if you remember, like, I think, we were treading a little bit, I think in the shallow end, and then
well, we were treading with weight.
Yeah. Well, Gabby was teaching us like the basics of like swimming, and we had like the goggles on and like the thing that you breathe out of or whatever, which I had never really worn before. And then I think one of the first exercises we had to like hold a dumbbell and like swim with one arm. Remember that?
Yeah, 100%, of course.
And I kept sinking because I'm like trying to muscle my way through the pool. And you're, of course, like this goddess, just like figuring out a way to kind of, transform your intensity as a trainer and kind of bring it down into this space of equanimity to kind of glide across the water. And the reason I say this isn't to like necessarily like kiss your ass or anything. It's because shortly after that, you got like, if you remember, I got like separated from you and you were like doing more like advanced things in the pool.
All of a sudden I was in the deep end and you were froggy styling in the shallow water. I think just goddess comes from the red hair and maybe being Ariel because we were in the water. I'll give you that. How about that?
I'll take it.
Yeah. I almost said I can show you the world, and then I realized that's also not the Little Mermaid. That's Aladdin.
Yeah, that's Aladdin, but I'll take that as well.
We're just combining all forces here. I think the challenge is anytime, and I'm sure you face this as well, is when you're used to being a coach and a trainer and being knowledgeable in a field and then stepping into someone else's field and becoming the pupil. It's that fine line of wanting to take in as much information as you can and learn, but also be like, no, but I'm in this world too.
Right. And it's that, and then coupled with you're looking at 2 people that were there that are 2 of the most like elite and successful athletes like in their profession, and that are recognized not just in a national level, but an international level for what they do. And then, like you said, both of us as trainers are coming in there and like, all right, I know like how the body works. I know how to develop endurance and how to work my muscles. I know how to do all these things, exercise programs, but like the water was the ultimate equalizer, which is what we both learned.
To top on that, I think there's something to be said when you get an opportunity like that. First of all, let's touch on the idea of like anytime you create a workout program, right? You want to switch up the routine because your body adapts to anything that you do on a consistent basis, right? So it was an opportunity for us both to kind of push our limits in the fitness world in a whole different realm, right? But I also think there's something that's really cool instead of going into a situation like that allows us for it to be an inspiration versus intimidation. And I think it's really cool when we can put ourselves in those situations and say, wow, I have this opportunity and this has happened for a reason, to have this experience and to grow from it, not to go and be like, oh my gosh, what if I mess up?
Yeah. And to just really go into it with like hardly any expectations. And I remember texting a few friends that had done the workout or whatever, like beforehand. And they pretty much said the same thing. It was like, just don't try and keep up. Just do your own thing and just know that no one's going to be as fit as some of the other people who have been doing it for a long time. And I really took that to heart. Like your experience, like we talked about how this experience kind of shaped us in a way where we put ourselves in a situation that wasn't comfortable. We were super uncertain about how it would end up going, but it ended up helping us grow for the better. Like, has that been something that you've personally always done? Or was this something that was kind of new for you and you just decided to try it?
I think I'm always open to new opportunities. And I think it goes back to kind of being comfortable with the uncomfortable. And as simple as when I tell my clients, if a workout's too easy, you're not pushing yourself enough. And if you're not pushing yourself enough, how do you grow? And that's kind of my theory. Safe spaces are safe for a reason. And we don't grow staying in those spaces. I think it's good to go into them and kind of reflect and check in with ourselves, but then also, how do you grow? And it's by pushing limits, by putting yourself into new environments and meeting new people. I think it's a great thing to do and a great experience, and grateful for every time it can happen. Now, I'm not going to go say I go in like no fear at all, because then I'd just be a bullshitter. There's definitely intimidating situations, but I think they're all there for a reason, and we grow from each and every one of them.
Absolutely. And I think that fitness is the ultimate catalyst to help you embrace discomfort, help you, just grow, not just physically, obviously, but mentally and emotionally and spiritually. And then also really be there as a tool and a strategy to help you when you are going through tough times. And it can be the one area of discomfort you kind of maintain in your life when you still need to maybe take a step back and take some time for yourself and be in that safe place, like kind of like you were saying. And I know for you, that has been like a staple. I've heard you say, you and I have had conversations about like where you would be without fitness in your life. So maybe could you let the audience know?
Oh my gosh.
Where would Jenna Willis be?
I don't know.
Where would you be without fitness?
I can't, I don't even know what that would entail. I mean, the reality of it is, which is enlightening, at least for me, when I was able to look back and realize how impactful it was. Fitness has always been a part of my life. And I don't think I realized that it was fitness per se. Fitness as a kid for me was riding my bicycle outside and doing sidewalk relay races or jumping on the trampoline with my friends for hours on end. It was getting out of school and having playtime. And it was a release and an outlet and somewhere where I could be like fully present and myself. And it wasn't until I got older that I realized fitness was helping with anxiety. It was helping create a regimen. It was helping with discipline and so many more things that the list goes on. And it really hit me hard. So I went to school in New York as a freshman on a Division I volleyball scholarship. Just going to brush that one off. Had to slide that in there. So I always wanted to pursue acting. And at the time, I was actually going into New York City, taking acting classes, and then going back to school playing volleyball. And my sophomore year of college, I went to my parents and I was like, I'm stopping school and I'm moving to LA and I'm going to be an actor. And my parents were like, that's cool. Good luck. Or you can transfer colleges, go to school, and go somewhere in LA. And then, the first year out, if you need a little help, we're there to support you, but we'd love for you to finish your degree. My dad's like a Jewish lawyer. You know what I mean? Like it wasn't a choice. And it wasn't a choice. And when he was growing up, he'll say it. He was like, I was either going to be a lawyer or a doctor or a dentist. And what's funny is he had the hair too. He was in a 17 magazine as a kid and he had a few songs on the radio. So it's in the blood of like performer. My mom was actually a theater minor in college. So they both kind of had the bug. So when I told them I was going to pursue it, their response was great. And go to school, study it in school and see what happens. So I moved out to Los Angeles. I ended up going to Loyola Marymount University. I transferred and I stopped exercising. I joined a sorority. And for the first time ever, I was like, playing a Division I sport is a job. And I wanted to enjoy my college life. So for the first 6 months of being in LA, I completely stopped exercising. Joined a sorority. It was enjoying all of the extracurricular activities. And I had a panic attack in the middle of a sorority meeting in a church. They had to lay me down in the middle of the church, right?
I'm only laughing because I've had a lot of panic attacks and I can definitely relate to what you're about to say.
I mean, severe anxiety. And I remember going to my doctor and he was like, exercise. I was like, yeah, that would make sense. And I haven't been doing a lot of it lately.
So, it was one of those things that I knew fitness was always extremely important in my life. And growing up until that moment, I don't think I realized how much I needed it and how important it was for clarity and stability and literally day-to-day functioning until that very, very specific moment in my meeting, my sorority meeting, when I just completely, lost control. It was a panic attack. And I started exercising again, getting back into fitness and health and wellness. But it was more of a side thing of just part of what I did in pursuing my acting career.
Right. Right. And it's an interesting thing you bring up because there's a lot of people that say that very thing, and that they like were taking care of their health and wellness. And then all of a sudden, the moment they stopped, things started coming up for them, or like moments in their life that were stressful. And you're going through a big transition. You had just moved coast to coast. You now had stopped exercising and moving your body. And now you've made this massive leap of faith to jump into a world where there's tons of uncertainty in the entertainment space.
It's funny because at that point, I was actually still in college. I mean, I was literally, for the first time ever, felt like I was living the college life and having those experiences. And it's funny because, people say they have a push and pull with fitness. I absolutely have had my own journey when it comes to that level, but it's come into play in super transformative times in my life.
Yeah.
And that is incredible.
Right. And I know that moment for you was a big moment for you to make that shift and get back into fitness. And then where did that take you? Like, you're in college, you're out in LA, you're immersed in the entertainment world a little bit. Like, where did you go from that moment?
At that point, I became an elliptical girl. You know those people that all they do is they spend an hour on the treadmill or on the elliptical. Those are a lot of people now that, I have as clients who are like, but I've been doing this for, but I do the elliptical for 45 minutes, or I do it. It took me a few years to get into weight training, like actual strength-based weight training. And I think that's a big fear for a lot of women in particular, the fear of bulking, the fear of lifting heavy weights, stepping into something that you're not familiar with. And that's when I actually had my biggest physical transformation, was when I stepped into the world of weights when I was about 25 years old, 24 years old. And that's also been the place where I have found the biggest release as well. It wasn't until I went through a really, really, really traumatic breakup in 2016 that was kind of my trigger to not only transform myself, but also, friends who have been working out with me and other people physically and mentally, and became certified as a trainer in 2017.
Wow. What an amazing testimony, I guess, to be able to take like something like super dark, like you just said, and turn it into something meaningful. What was going on though at that moment in your life? You mentioned the traumatic breakup. I think, what was the relationship like? What were your hopes for it? Like, was it something that you thought was going to last forever? Or?
Yes. I was with him from 22 to 30. I was so crazy about him. The relationship was so tumultuous, so unhealthy, and we fought. We fought all the time. And, when you're in a relationship like that, you're like, ooh, it's passion. I'm really in love. And then you start to go to therapy and you realize a lot of what you think is love is just unhealthy patterns. And, what is love and what is a relationship? It's communication. And we had none of it. It just got to the point where it wasn't progressing. We were engaged and we had broken up once or twice along the way and gotten back together. And it was one of those moments where, we were in an argument and it was a moment of clarity and gave the ring back. And there was no coming back from that. And even after that, we tried to make it work for a little while. And it ended in a really, really bad fight. And I went into a very, very bad depression. And I was at home on the couch a lot, reading. I was on a TV series that same year called The People vs. OJ. I recurred on the show on FX. And the show was airing, and I had gone back to waiting tables. And I was so depressed. And I would just, in between that, I would come home and I'd sit on my couch and read. And I got up one day and I was like, you're going to get your ass to the gym. And I did. Like, God's honest truth, it was one of the few times where I felt present and real and full. And I don't know if everyone has that experience, and I hope everyone does to some degree when they step in there and just allow themselves to be in their body and be in the moment and enjoy that uplifting energy of being in the gym. I started working out more and really just honing it in, and it got to the point where the gym was like my safe space and my happy space. And I started booking some fitness modeling. and some more acting jobs. And I was living the life of an actor. Literally so fortunate. I'd stopped waiting tables. I got to the point where I was like, if I have to serve anyone else ketchup, I am going to punch someone in the face. And I was like, this isn't healthy for anyone. And I was like, this is great, living the life of an actor. 6 months went by, and I was like, wow, if I don't book a job for another 6 months, I'm not in a great place. I was going to the gym, and a woman came up to me one day, and she's like, oh my gosh, that exercise. She's like, that's great. She's like, do you work here? And I was like, no, I don't. I was like, but this is what you do. I kid you not, I was at the gym the next day, and I'm on the cable machine doing who knows what. And a woman came up to me and she's like, oh my gosh, she's like, that exercise, it's amazing. She's like, do you work here? I was like, no, I don't, but this is what you do. And Doug, I kid you not, I went to the gym the next day and I'm doing a glute bridge or something on the ball, some sort of booty exercise, of course. And a woman was like, I have been trying to target that. She's like, oh my gosh, she's like, do you work here? And I looked at her and I was like, yes, I do. I was like, what can I do for you? And I was like, if I've ever gotten a sign in my life, this was it. So I went home, I ordered the books, and I said, it's time to start training my friends, not for free, but, for a charge. I'm kidding. But it was amazing. And I took the leap of faith. I honed in, I became certified CPR, first aid, all of that, and I hit the ground running. And I never looked back.
Do you work here? I love that story. It's funny.
Yeah.
There's so much I want to go back to. I think right where I want to go now, though, I think it's just something that comes to mind is I think a lot of people, myself included, when you go through something that shakes you and that is traumatic, it's easy to escape, right? And to go into things like fitness where you see people just over exercise sometimes when they're going through hard times, or you see people, maybe they take a job or they find a way to gain more attention in some other area of their life. And they end up just like almost like kicking that ball of healing, that ball of trauma, like further down the court. Did you ever get to a place like, shortly after that time where you realize like, all right, fitness has been a great tool for me and it still will be, but there's some shit like inside that I have to begin to unpack?
Yeah, it wasn't like all I did was fitness and workout. I mean, you know me pretty well by now to know that meditation is a huge part of my practice. After all of the live classes I teach, I actually follow up with breath work or a meditation in Don't Sweat It Alone, which is my virtual online fitness company. That and therapy, a lot of therapy. And I think it is so important. I've learned so much about myself and my patterns and choices through having a safe space to talk to someone about them. So absolutely, there was a lot of unloading and relationships after that in which you test the skills that you've learned, and there's fear in it. But if you don't practice, you don't grow and you don't learn.
And I know we've talked a lot about relationships, like you and I, we've definitely had some deep conversations about that, and not just like the one you described, but other ones that maybe haven't worked out for either one of us. And we've just really gotten to know each other just through that. But there's people that are listening to this that like perhaps they've come to this place in their life where they've been through bad breakup, bad relationship, bad breakup, like one after another, right?
Well, you're not alone.
Right. And they're like, I'm freaking done. Like, I don't ever want to even try again. Like, and I know you are somebody that you just have this never give up mentality. And even though like there's days where you feel off or whatever,
yeah,
but you just keep going. Like, what advice do you have to that person who's listening to this, who just feels like they're going to be alone forever and that relationships suck?
I've been there. I've had that thought many a times. And I think it's funny because I'm one of those people who I'm still working on this practice in believing that everything happens for a reason while you're going through it, if that makes sense. I really am, I like to say I'm a realist in the sense of I process in the moment. I get super frustrated with situations, but I can guarantee, and I will challenge anyone who is listening to this, that every breakup or bad relationship you had, or whether it ended well or not, what transpired from that. And that's where I always think the silver lining is. I never would have become a trainer if My ex and I didn't break up. I literally, one of the biggest reasons I moved to LA was another breakup. And it's crazy when you look back and you can actually properly reflect and step out of each relationship relationship. I literally said relationship. Maybe if it's over, it was a relationship. Relationship that you've been in, and find the silver linings and how you did grow in those relationships to prepare you for the next stage in your life.
Right. I mean, I think one of the things I often will say to myself, I mean, during times where things are tough, like relationship wise, or even to some friends of mine, is that it hurts to have your heart broken again. Right. But it also hurts to not, and just to sit here and just not bet on yourself and not take that chance, not ask that person out, or not even put yourself out there in the dating world or whatever. And because the unfortunate thing with life is that bad things happen sometimes.
Yeah, and also if you're not trying or putting yourself out there, you're really not living. And we weren't put on this earth to do it alone. Whatever your relationship is and whoever it's with, we were built for companionship. And if you stop searching for that, you're kind of giving up on life. And that's really sad.
It is. It is really sad because I think when people do that, they've lost the fight within themselves. They've lost that I'm going to try because I believe in myself. They've lost that I try because I know I deserve better. They've lost that I'm going to try because there's something great out there for me. And it's sad. And when I hear people say that, I always invite them to just focus on how far they've come and not how far they have to go. Because when we're in the thick of it and we're in these hard moments where something like a breakup or you lose a job or whatever happens, we get tunnel vision and we get flooded with all these emotions. And it's so easy to just focus on all that. But I think if you can just take a step back and acknowledge that, yeah, like the situation is tough, but like what hard situations have I gotten myself through? Like I've come this far and I'm not giving up. And then like figure out like maybe some people you can go spend some time with to help boost your mood, or maybe meditate, like you were saying, fitness, like all kinds of things where you can now start to work on getting yourself out of that rut instead of just sitting in that rut for weeks and months at a time, which then in turn creates a bigger rut. I want to go back to your acting career because that was like the main reason, if you will, that you moved to LA, was you wanted to pursue this dream as an actor. You talked about the moment where you rekindled your relationship with fitness after that panic attack, but you still wanted to become an actor. So like, where did that journey start? Like you mentioned the reality show you were on a few years ago. Like, how did your acting career start?
Oh my gosh. It started when I was probably 8 years old. My parents took me to go see a musical called The Newsies. And I was sitting in the audience. And I remember sitting there just so full of life and so much joy. And I had this epiphany of I want to make people feel the way that I feel right now for the rest of my life. And that's when I started taking acting classes. And I thought I could, bring joy to people's lives by entertaining them. And I would put shows on for my parents every single night and play dress up and, do the thing and take acting classes at the local playhouse. It was called Paper Mill Playhouse. And then I was taking acting classes on the side all through high school. So I was playing sports through high school, but every Saturday I was going and taking an acting class. And that's why I think when I hit the point in college where I said, I'm ready. I really want to take this leap and dig into this. And what I will say is, my parents having me go and study theater in college was a blessing because I grew a lot. I got to do a lot of plays, a lot of practice, a lot of prep for, obviously when I did go out into the real world and start auditioning, I felt much better prepared. Yeah, it was one of those things. Like I graduated college, and the year I graduated, I booked a lead in an independent film, and I called my parents, and I was like, I made it, Mom and Dad. And that the film never saw the light of day. The whole next year, I think I booked like a web series or something. And then in 2013, I'll never forget this moment. And this is the thing with acting. Any sort of performance-related industry, it's like gambling. And you get that rush. And you love it when you get to do it so much that it makes the game worth it. If you do love it that much. I remember I was, sitting at home and my manager called me and he's like, it was Grey's Anatomy. And he's like, you booked it. You booked the patient. And I just remember calling my parent and crying and laughing and yeah.
So you were in Grey's Anatomy as a patient?
Yep. First TV job ever. I think the episode's actually called Do You Believe in Magic? You don't forget something like that. Your first TV job, it's like,
Right. So 2013, you book your first major kind of TV show.
Yeah.
Where did your acting career go from there?
So I feel like I'm one of those people. I've been fortunate to work. At this point, I've probably been on 10 different TV shows. I've done guest spots. I've done co-stars. I've recurred on some shows. The People versus OJ. I love it. And I actually have a film premiering next week. I get to go, go see it premiere, and I'm super excited. It's very much a part of my life. Performing is a huge aspect of who I am, and I love it. And yeah, but it's hard. Like I say, it's hard out here for a pimp. It's a very difficult industry, and if you get to do it at all, you're super fortunate. And I had an acting coach who said it best. She was like, "If you're a performer, you're a performer." And even if you're performing an acting class, and that's such a good mindset to have as an actor. Oh, I think it was Bryan Cranston's interview too, where he was like, each opportunity, each audition, go and play the role. Don't think about getting the part. And as an actor, your job is to audition. Booking it is the reward for most people.
What's some of the biggest challenges that you faced as you were trying to get booked on different shows or in different films, other than the money? I think people understand that when you're on the come up as an actor, money's tough. What were some of the other challenges you faced?
Stability and worth.
In what ways?
It's very difficult to feel stable in life if you feel like work isn't consistent. And that's an industry where it's not, for 99% of people. And honestly, it's a ladder. So even the people who are up here, they're competing with the people who are up here. And then if you're up here, how do you stay up here? Right? And every industry has that to a certain degree. It just feels super hyper honed in on that industry, for lack there of a better word right now.
So you mentioned that you feel more stable based on the level of work that you have. Did you find yourself just continuing to get roles or get jobs, even in things you didn't want to, just so you could feel like you were somewhat stable?
Well, I think there's that, but it's also continuing to be able to perform and work on your craft and, continue to use your instrument in that sense. But yeah, I think anytime you get to be in front of the camera is an experience and an opportunity to work on your craft. But not everyone feels that way. That's me,
And I know some of your closest friends now are from the reality show, Vanderpump Rules. How did that come about?
So, okay, this is a fun story. I was doing extra work on a show called Numbers. And I remember going into the fitting room and I had on overalls. Numbers was this show that was all business. The whole show basically took place in an office, right? And I walk in, me just being my Jersey self. I'm in overalls and denim, and I was like, how's this outfit? The wardrobe woman was like, that's funny, da, da, da. And a girl behind me started laughing. And we ended up talking that whole day. She was also doing extra work, and her name's Katie Maloney. And Katie Maloney is one of the leads on Vanderpump Rules. Katie and I, both 22 years old, became immediate friends, hit it off. She was also pursuing acting at the time. And we ended up working together at a restaurant called Barney's Beanery, which was my first waiting job, my first serving job ever. I completely lied on my resume to get this job, by the way. Completely lied. That's a funny story. I performed. I was an actress in that moment.
Well, why would you lie? Was it an elite restaurant to work at or something?
No. I had just never waited tables before, and I was like, I need to get my first job. I asked a bunch of friends who had waited tables, what kind of questions are they going to ask me? What things should I be prepared? What total tabs? How many tables do I handle at a time? So I created this whole resume of I worked at Riff Raff in New York and did it, right? So I go into this interview at Barney's Beanery. I have this awesome interview. And she's like, well, we're hiring if, you got the job. She's like, you got the job, kid. So I show up, I go through training, and I'm like doing great. I get, hired after being, you're in training for like a week. I get hired. And the whole night goes, you ready for this? My boss, my manager, goes, all right, Jenna, where are all your receipts? I said, I threw them away. He's like, what do you mean you threw them away? I was like, oh, I threw them away after. He goes, well, how are you going to count up your tips? And I was like, oh, and the girl behind me, she's like, this girl's clearly never waited tables. It bit me in the ass so hard. But I ended up working there for, probably about 3 years. And Katie and I worked there together. And Katie left a little bit after I did, and she ended up working at a restaurant called Sir. Mind you, Katie and I were also roommates at this time. That's how close we became. And when the time came, I asked Katie, I was like, hey, I need a new job. And she said, well, Sir isn't hiring, but Villa Blanca is. So Villa Blanca, if you are in the reality world at all, is one of the other restaurants that a woman named Lisa Vanderpump owns. And when Lisa wanted to do her spinoff based on the Real Housewives of Beverly Hills, it was based on the group of servers who worked at Sir and Villa Blanca. So Katie, of course, now is still a lead. They're currently filming season 10. And I actually got to film with them yesterday, training some of the girls on the show, which is fun. It was really fun to go back and be with them because I stepped away in 2015. So I kind of played like a sub role on the show. I'd kind of like pop in a little bit here and there. And then in 15, I stepped away. So it's really cool to be back yesterday, actually. This was yesterday.
That's crazy. And it's just such a wild story of how something that you thought would like bite you in the butt actually kind of became like a really big blessing, right? Because it led you to then working at this like exclusive restaurant, then you meet other people, and then you get on the reality show. And now like some of the people in that show, like Lala and Katie, have become some of your closest friends. So like you were on the same path as somebody like Katie, and you're close friends with somebody like Lala, and they've both, I guess, maybe from the outside. I mean, everybody has their stuff, and from the outside looking in, they've had quite a bit more success in the entertainment space. And I know that for you, that was like your dream. Like, how do you manage that, being so close with them, but also like deep down in your heart, knowing that at one time, like that was your dream as well?
That's a great question. In 2015, that's actually when I booked The People versus OJ. And I remember having this conversation with my management at the time. He's like, and this was when you were going to do reality or act. It wasn't when kind of both were a thing. And again, I wasn't a lead on Vanderpump Rules. I was a sub, kind of I'd pop in and out. And my manager's like, either you want to do reality or you want to be an actor. And I was recurring on The People versus OJ at that point. And I was like, my dream was never to be famous. My dream was to impact people. And I was getting to do it as a performer on a great show at that time. So I actually stepped away, voided my contract from Vanderpump Rules. And that's when I fully stepped into acting. Now, mind you, that is also when my breakup happened. So it was like this like crazy explode. And the breakup ended so badly. I guess where I'm going with this is there's a few ways to look at it. It is challenging, and I'd be lying if I said I haven't sat here and been like, wow, I could be here. Or if I stayed on the show, this could have happened. And I think it's important to check in with myself and remind myself that, wow, I'm having this epiphany like right now. So thank you for asking this question. Literally, I, as a kid, wanted to impact people's lives. I am still doing that on so many other levels than just as an actor. And I think it's a beautiful way to look at it, as I am literally transforming people's lives now as a trainer. And I do still get to perform. And no, it might not be to the level of success that they might have in the entertainment world, but it is a really beautiful thing that I'm getting to do, and I still get to do it. And that's what I wanted to do as a kid. So it's reminding myself that my success might be different than theirs, but it's still a success to that young girl who had that dream to help people.
So beautifully said. And I think that's an important reminder for people that are listening to this, where they're in a place in life that maybe they didn't think they would be. Maybe just a few years ago, you thought you'd be somewhere else, maybe even further along in some area.
Absolutely. And I'm not going to sit here and bullshit us and say I still don't think about that all the time, because I do, and it's hard. But also, you are who you surround yourself with. And there is a reason that these girls are my friends, that I do get to train. The people that I get to train, I train some really empowering, incredible women, and they're in my circle. And we all impact each other in different ways for different reasons.
And I think one of the things people have the hardest time with is they feel like they're being pulled like in this direction. If you're listening to this, I'm like pointing to the right, but yet they're trying to pull themselves to the left because they're still going back
Yeah.
to that old version of themselves, that old dream, that old profession, that old relationship, or whatever it is. And yet they have this tug that they feel deep down is like pulling them to the right direction and like trying to move them forward and not backwards. And people have a hard time like almost embracing that pull to the right and just letting go of the tug backwards. Like, you were in a place in your life where you went through this horrific breakup. Like you said, you decided to walk away from reality TV and kind of go into the acting career full on. Like, how did you decide to like leave an industry like full-time, like acting at a moment where you like were needing like attention and needing like fulfillment? No,
what do you mean? What are you talking about, Doug? I don't need attention. I rode the wave. I let the arrow fly, and that is so hard for me because I absolutely have control issues. I think we all do to some degree, but I really let the arrow fly, and I've accepted, like, I still have an agent. I audition for acting, and I love it. And any chance I get to perform, I love it. But I have let the arrow fly, and I said, you know what? I'm going to follow my journey, and it's mine, right? And each and everything is happening for a reason. If you hear some like weird yelping in the background, that's my dog. not being as polite as yours. She's she's an old lady, and she sometimes just starts doing these, like, it sounds like a baby seal. It's her way of trying to ask for attention, so I apologize.
Oh, it's all good. No, it just adds to the entertainment of this episode.
It's literally like a in the background.
So when you walked away from reality TV, did you still maintain these friendships with the girls, or was that something that came later on?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think both. I think it's anything, when you're involved in something, you're closer with people overall, right? I think we're lucky if we have 3 true deep friendships in our whole life, right? It's like anything. You're friends with people who you work with. You're friends with people who you see in the gym because you see them every day, right? So I'm very fortunate to maintain relationships with the girls, but like their lives is the show. And mine is, in the health and wellness industry, and it is different, but we've absolutely remained close. And I train Lala, so I do get to see Lala all the time and stay in touch with the girls who I am close with, for sure.
That's super cool. And I think it's really inspiring that you've ridden the wave and that you didn't like let the success of the girls in the entertainment space kind of pull you back into that and then hold you back from doing what you're so passionate and so great at, which is inspiring, impacting, changing people's lives. With regards to like training people and doing what you do now, the world of training celebrities, the world of training people in Los Angeles is hyper competitive. Like, some of these people that you train could train with anybody they wanted to. They could afford to pay anybody. What do you think separates you from the rest, and why are people so drawn to you?
Totally. I think it's my personality. I mean, honestly, pretty much all my clients will say they feel like they're working out with a friend. And the session goes by like that. I think fitness is fun. It should be fun. I don't think it needs to be this grueling experience where people are miserable. I definitely think hard work makes change. I'm not, negating that aspect of it. And I think dedication is key and definitely shifts in lifestyle. But I really just think it's my approach to their programs and our relationships in general. Yeah, it's like you said it perfectly. Like there's so many trainers, and there's a lot of trainers who are knowledgeable. I'm not sitting here being like I'm Obi-Wan Kenobi and I know more than all other trainers. Like that's a lie. You know, I'm definitely knowledgeable, and I've spent a lot of time researching some people who I think are fantastic and growing. We're always growing, but I think it's more just I'm not afraid to make a fool of myself, right? And I think that makes it relatable. And I think, we're all in this together. And that's also a certain approach that I think they appreciate.
One of the things that really impresses me about you and the way you carry yourself with your clients, I mean, because I can see some of the videos that you post, is that you have this level of authenticity within you that just doesn't seem to get shaken. And in a world where it's very easy to become inauthentic. I mean, you're in the entertainment space. Some of your closest friends and clients are some of the most notable people in that arena. And then you're also like in the health and fitness space where it's super easy to be competitive with what other people look like or how other people act and dress. Like, how have you kept yourself so true to yourself and authentic, like throughout your journey in LA?
First of all, that almost makes me want to cry because that means a lot. So thank you for saying that. I think, literally, I almost just started tearing up. So thank you. That was really kind. I think it's just I've been through a lot. And I think we've all been through a lot in our own ways. And just because you've had more success than someone else monetarily on screen doesn't mean you're better. And I think beauty comes in all shapes and sizes. And I think everyone has something that they're good at. It doesn't matter what it is. And I think we're all equal. And I also thank my mom. My mom always told me, be kind. Be kind. Like that was the thing that she always said. It's easier to be nice than mean. And also I was bullied as a kid. Maybe that has something to do with it. Just always remind myself, I was bullied in high school. And I think it's a terrible feeling to be bullied. It's terrible. And I don't ever want anyone to feel that way. Maybe that's why.
Yeah. And I mean, I think it's got to be super challenging and hard when you're in this city. I like LA. I mean, I'm going to be in LA soon. We're going to see each other. I mean,
Yeah.
I think it's easy to fall into that trap of comparison because everyone like seems to want to be outdoing each other. Everyone's like there's a lot of people who are getting plastic surgery. There's a lot of people it's like they have like a trainer. Not only do they have a trainer, they have like their personal yoga instructor. Not only do they have a personal yoga instructor, they have like their own Pilates instructor. And then, throw in a massage, like all these things where they essentially have their own spa at their house. Right.
By the way, can I show you guys my spa room?
Yeah.
No, just kidding. Just kidding. I don't have that. It's hard. And I think it's, again, just constant reminders of we all have added value, and if that's what makes someone happy, then let them do it. It's not necessarily what brings joy to me or to you. And I think it's finding what does bring you joy. And if someone wants to do a bunch of plastic surgery to, feel better about themselves or feel more confident, great, go do it. That hasn't been my MO, and who knows where the future will take me, but I enjoy not doing it right now. And it's absolutely challenging. I just think it's reminding yourself what brings you joy and surrounding yourself with good people who are sincere, who do have your back, and remembering your roots.
Speaking of good people and surrounding yourself with the right ones, I know that this is something that we've chatted about before. And you mentioned something to me that stuck with me that I wanted to talk to you about, where you said somebody that you either grew up with or somebody from school, like came to visit you in LA and like hung around with you in the group of people that you got to spend a lot of time with now. And she was so happy that you found like your crew, that you found people that really bring the best out on you. Like, why was that comment like so meaningful? And what was your friend circle like before then that maybe didn't have your best interest at heart?
I mean, I think it's exactly what you said. LA's vapid. And it is very much about appearance. And LA is one of those cities where everyone is trying to get somewhere. And if everyone is trying to get somewhere, they're putting themselves first. To touch back on relationships, I think it takes a lot to learn when you're going through those dark places that you'll never get through it without your friends. And I also think maybe once I stepped up as a better friend and started showing up more, I got the same in return. And I have now found myself in an incredible group of women who always show up, who are so supportive, who always have my back. And it's my goal to do the same in turn. Again, I think it just goes back to exactly what you said. You know, LA is one of those towns, but there are still good people. It's just a matter of weaving through and finding your people. And that takes time.
They call it like clout chasing now, I think, where you're seeing
Oh,
people,
yeah, that makes sense.
they're always trying to like use somebody to get attention or use somebody to get connected to somebody. It's almost like you're trying to climb circles or trying to climb ladders. But I think I want to say this, and maybe like, I don't know if I've said this before. I think it makes sense. And I honestly understand why people do it, because you're living in a city that's incredibly competitive. It's super expensive and people are like trying to survive.
You know, I've literally had someone say to me, God's honest truth was, you know, you have so many famous friends. Like, why don't you try to use them to gain more? And my answer was, because that's not what friendship is to me. And I believe that if people want to help you, no matter what the situation is, no matter what the relationship is, they will if they want to. You know what I mean? And I think that's what authenticity is. Going into each situation without expectation, it's really hard to do. But I encourage everyone to try to do it. And we are human, you know what I mean? Of course, we have hopes and dreams and whatever, but like what you want from people isn't what they want to give. It's your expectations that you're putting on them, right? So how do you try to ease those expectations? Does that make sense?
Yeah, but I think there's also a level of like care, I think, that goes into it, where maybe some of these people who are quote unquote like famous maybe just aren't happy in that life. And they see somebody like yourself who, I mean, yeah, we all have our ups and downs, but you're like doing you and you're kind of happy with what you're doing. And like, man, like you don't want what I have. Like I do it because I'm in it. It's what pays my bills. Like it's somewhat easy to me at this point to find new gigs and stuff, but I'm freaking miserable. And I would never wish this upon anybody, because it's so easy to sit from the outside and say, Jenna, like if you just got into acting and you went full-time on a reality show and you like did this, that, and the other and lived in Hollywood Hills, like you would be like forever happy. And we all know it's BS.
Totally. It wasn't for me.
Do you feel that like as somebody who was kind of, you were always on the acting journey, like you never really, I mean this with love, you never really quote unquote like made it where you were like,
No, that's okay. Yeah.
And you'll see where I'm going with this.
How do I hang up?
There's an end, bottom right, there's an end button. But you had to build and develop this never give up mentality to survive in that area where you really didn't like quote unquote get to a place where,
yeah, of course,
you were just booking gigs left and right and you were getting paid millions of dollars. Do you think that has shaped you into who you are now, with all the stuff you've had to deal with over the last few years with the pandemic and everything else that's happened, where the fitness business has been challenged?
Well, speaking of like trusting your path, I do get to perform all the time. My dog, she went, oh, I do get to perform all the time. And if it weren't for my skills of acting and putting in the time and energy, I don't think I would be doing what I'm doing today at all when it comes to performing as a fitness trainer. And now it's this beautiful place of where I've gotten to take my skills as an expert in the wellness industry now and my background as a performer to perform as a trainer and work with incredible companies like TRX and make content for them, and Fabletics, and, you know, get to talk to Women's Health Magazine and discuss workouts and collaborations with some great companies. And I do perform all the time. And it might not be how I initially thought I was going to be performing, but damn straight I am, you know, and it's awesome. And it's so fun. So yeah, it's kind of figuring out how all of the pieces led to this moment. And who knows where I'm going to be in 5 years from now. I mean, I know I have goals, I have intentions, but, you know.
Where are you at now with like your relationship with anxiety and fear?
Oh, it's all still there. It's really funny. I actually had this great conversation with Ariana yesterday, believe it or not. And, we were talking about her having her own business and all of these. And I am so sorry about my dog. All of these endeavors. And she said herself, she's like, I have so much anxiety with being and like being at these places and people's expectations. And I was like, or she didn't use the word anxiety. She's like, one of the hardest parts I have of being a businesswoman is showing up and people having these expectations. And I was like, well, that's anxiety. Anxiety is fear of the future. And it's there. And it's real. And I think it's a part of who we are. And if you are excited about something, you get anxiety mostly because you care and you want to do a good job, right? But that's when I kind of put myself in check and I remind myself to be as present as possible and relating to the people or the situation that I might be stepping into to ground myself. And exercise. A lot of exercise and meditation and grounding work,
Yeah, I mean, I think anytime you're experiencing like massive bouts of anxiety, you're right. It's typically like something you're worrying about in the future, which by the way, like hasn't happened yet.
Exactly. And you're putting expectations, right? And our expectations of a situation is what creates anxiety. And I also think it's just the more you practice and the more that you step into those fears, the more that you do put them at ease. It's like getting on a bike for the first time in 10 years, right? I feel like most people can relate to that. You're like, oh my gosh, I haven't been on a bicycle in so long. You have this kind of butterfly feeling at first of like, oh, am I gonna? And then you're doing it for 5 minutes. You're like, oh my gosh, I got this. This is so much fun. I'm so glad I stepped back on them or rode back on them. Got back on the bike?
Get back on the wagon, right?
Get back on the wagon. Exactly. Yeah. So, yes.
One of the things that I know you've had a hard time with that you've bounced back from in the last like year or so is you've mentioned that some of your biggest transformations and comebacks in life have come after bad breakups. And I know you had another one like within the last year that was with somebody that you thought you were going to spend quite a bit of time with and it didn't end up working out. Like, where were you at after that ended? Like, where were you at mentally? Where were you at emotionally? Where was your anxiety, your fear? Like, where were you like at overall? And then like, how did you pull yourself out to get back to like some level of equanimity?
Self-love. A lot of self-love and immersing myself in my friendships, in work. And I allowed myself to go through the part that I needed to, and I didn't try to shut it down. I really believe you need to go through it to get out of it.
Through what though? Well, like what part?
Through the pain, through the loneliness, through the expectations that you had on what life was going to be, right? And why you had those expectations, and what were the triggers as to why it was so hard when it did end. And if you ask yourself, you'll find out why. And a lot of those triggers go deep down into childhood. You know what I mean? And taking the time to do the growth. And then utilizing those space into healthier realms for you, like your work. It gets to a point where it's just like, okay, enough is enough. Now what? And it really is that simple and difficult.
You talked about triggers or figuring out like why something bothers you, like about a certain moment in your life. And there's people that they just don't get to the place where they either have the self-awareness to know that's what they need to maybe do to in order to move forward, is to kind of go back a little bit and see like why this is becoming sensationalized in this moment, or why it's becoming more intense, I should say. And then also having the courage and the hope to know that this pattern doesn't have to be like this forever. What were those triggers for you? Like when you were experiencing the fears of loneliness, the fears of pain, like what was coming up for you?
I mean, like, what were my triggers or what helped me get through them?
You found out that these triggers like went back to your childhood. Like what were those triggers reminding you of?
Loneliness as a child, a fear of abandonment. I mean, as simple and complex as those things, and taking literally 1 second at a time when I'm in places like that is so helpful. And I literally mean 1 second at a time. not worrying about the week or the next 6 months, but just that one moment, right? I think also another thing that helps is like when you're in those thoughts, at least for me, is like almost feed into it and you'll realize how ridiculous it is. Do you know what I mean? Because like the main thing is like, I'm going to end up alone and nobody loves me and da-da-da. And then you like really think about it. You're like, well, I've never ended up alone. Like someone else has almost always stepped into my life. And like, I'm not alone. I have my friends and I'm not alone. My dogs are right here and I'm not alone. I'm actually going to grab lunch with, my friend Sam in an hour. And no, I'm not alone. Like, it's like you start going into this like, oh wow, like, no, this isn't the reality of this situation. It might not be what I thought it was going to be, but I'm not alone.
And I think once you're able to move past like that part of it, where you kind of get past these limiting beliefs that come about like during moments of adversity, like losing a job, like going through a breakup, I mean, like losing a friend or whatever, you're able to not only get through them, but you're able to have some perspective and kind of see the silver lining in all of this, that you're like, all right, like, here's what I learned about myself. Here's how I could have handled it differently. Like, here's what I'm going to do better next time. And then you end up becoming a better version of yourself throughout that process. And then these moments of pain that during those moments you thought were going to be like lifetime.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Actually become your greatest teachers and your greatest catalysts.
100%.
Yeah. For growth and meaning in your life.
Yeah. And I think people have fears of their fears. Does that make sense? Like fear of abandonment and all these things. Like, it's okay to have those. It's how you work through them and acknowledge them that makes us who we are.
Right. Like our expectation or our idea of the, like how the fear is going to play out often becomes like way bigger than the fear. Like
oh my gosh. Yes, exactly. The mind is crazy. It's because, our minds are trying to fix everything. That's what it is, and that's it. Like, that's what I was going to say. That's why our minds do this. They try to fix our problems. And if we're feeling down and out, our mind is literally trying to find a solution. That's the reality.
Yeah. Like the fear of the outcome, I think, becomes like way bigger than the fear itself
of the reality of the situation.
Right. And our mind is like trying to put things together, and then it almost like validates you on why not take the chance. Like the thing I was going to say is that for me, and I don't talk about this a lot, like I was scared to like ask girls out, like up until maybe, I'm going to be 35, probably up until like 10 years ago, because the identity of who I saw in the mirror was still like the overweight, unconfident, low self-esteem, unworthy kid who was bullied in grade school. And there was this disconnect between who I really was and who I thought I was, right? And so I thought that because every time I would ask a girl to a dance or whatever when I was in school, like I got rejected because I was always like the kid who like didn't stand a chance with the hot girl going after the hot girls. And I was always told no, right?
Yeah.
But then like when I saw somebody like at a grocery store that I thought was attractive or I liked their energy or whatever, like I was afraid to ask them out because I was scared that if they said no, that meant that every other girl would say no, or am I going to look like an idiot or whatever. And I learned that A, it's not the case. And B, you learn and you grow from those situations. You end up going up to that. For me, you end up going up to that girl and you say, hey, like blah, 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 like whatever I would say in that moment.
Wait, so what exactly would you say?
Well, let's just say like,
I'm kidding.
Like, oh, like, you like frozen green beans or organic?
Yeah. So you like bananas?
I was like, oh, like you like the spaghetti, like carrots or something, or the zoodle. It was like the, how they make like spaghetti,
spaghetti squash.
Yeah, they made it out of like carrots. It was something different that I saw that she had, and she was like, oh, I love it, blah 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 blah. And I was like, oh, I'll have to try it. I was like, oh, like do you come here a lot? And then it just sparks a conversation, and then like you just get to talking, and then you realize like you can connect some dots, and you realize you have a few things in common. And you're like, hey, like
spaghetti carrots
or something.
Do you like spaghetti carrots?
Yeah.
If anyone takes anything away from today, please just remember spaghetti carrots.
We're gonna title this episode like, spaghetti carrots and Jersey Fire. You know.
You should call it "Get the fuck out of my way."
Yeah, right. That is true. But it was just interesting that, I mean, that time, I think with that, ironically, as goofy as I sounded, I ended up actually like connecting with this girl. But like what that did though, was it almost just like solidified that, people just want to be talked to, and people they want to feel like they're human and they're not put on a pedestal. And I was always putting girls on pedestals when I was younger, because that's what I felt I needed to be happy, was the validation from girls. And it ended up like really leading me to a dark place when I was in my early 20s. But bringing it back full circle, like even now, I almost feel like I'm a rejection professional. Like I don't mind getting I've gotten rejected a lot.
It goes back to, if you don't try, you don't know.
Right.
You know what I mean? And like at the end of the day, what is the worst thing that happens when we get rejected from anything?
Yeah, you just learn and you're like, all right, well, next.
You're like, oh, okay, next. Yeah, next. Right? Like a lot of, acting rejection kind of gets you to that. And you're just like, cool. You know what I mean? It really has nothing to do with you either. Really. It's all about them. Whether it's a job, whether it's, look, obviously if it's a job, you want to at least have some knowledge on, the interview you're going into. But a lot of the times it doesn't have anything to do with you. It has really to do with the other person and their lens and what they're seeing the world through.
I mean, it is. And I think also timing too is important. Like you never know.
Oh my God. Timing is everything.
And specifically with relationships. I mean, I've learned that if you go and you ask somebody out, or you ask somebody for their number and they say no, it doesn't necessarily mean they're not interested. And they could potentially have just gotten out of a relationship. They could just be busy or whatever. And you just kind of keep an open mind, but also just like keep moving forward on your path. And if that's meant to come back around, it will, right?
100%. I think that's what's meant for you will not pass you by. And I firmly believe in that. That's actually something I say a lot when I get frustrated. That's always a good reminder of me, of just accept what the universe is bringing your way or not.
As corny as it sounds to say things are happening for you and not to you, it's like the only way to look at things, because you can either like stay focused on this is happening to me and fall into that victim trap, and then you just end up replaying that same story in your head that the world's against you and that everybody hates you and you're not worthy enough, and then you end up believing that, and then that ends up becoming you. Like the sad thing is, like, you will become that person.
Oh, believe in that.
Yeah, and then your energy reflects that, and then you walk around and your head's on the ground because you don't think anybody like wants to look at you, or you end up just not pursuing things in your professional life or in your personal life because you already have convinced yourself in your mind that you're not worthy and that no matter what, you're going to lose.
100%. Mental strength is everything.
So speaking of mental strength, the last thing I want to talk to you about as we get more into, I want to go more into like health and fitness, because I know that is like your bread and butter. And there's a lot of people that are listening to this, a lot of parents, there's a lot of moms.
They should all know that my dog is licking my toes right now. That's how she's not barking anymore. Everyone should know that. Yep.
The jerseyness is coming out.
Yeah.
But there's people that are just busy. They're bouncing around professional schedules. They're juggling professional lives, or they got kids, they have sports, they have all these things, and they're busy. They have a tough time staying disciplined, staying accountable. Like, what are some of the best practices you use with your clients that are crazy busy as well in order to keep them disciplined and accountable to their fitness routine?
Well, the first one is, I call it the 5-minute rule. And it's do something for 5 minutes a day that's active. Create a habit. And once you start doing it, maybe it's walking for 5 minutes. Maybe it's going up and down a flight of stairs for 5 minutes. Maybe it is literally going to the gym and leaving. Honestly, but you've created a habit of it. And once you realize that you can do something for 5 minutes, you add on another 5 and another 5. That's for someone who's really struggling with time. And then you quickly realize, like, wow, 5 minutes is nothing. I got 10, I got 20. Once you hit like a 30-minute mark, you're in a really solid place. And I also think perspective. A lot of people look at their days Like, oh, I have to go to the supermarket. I have to get my laundry done. I have to pick up my kids from school. I have to go to work. You also have to work out. It's like brushing your teeth, right? It is a privilege. It's something that betters yourself. So I think a lot of it is shifting the perspective. Don't try to make time for it. Make time for it in your schedule. Some like little side things that are just like fun. If you buy yourself something new, I know this sounds silly, but like if you buy yourself a new purse, you're going to wear that purse all the time, right? Or if you buy that new shirt, you want to go show off that shirt. Buy yourself a new pair of sneakers, buy yourself a new sports bra, buy yourself a new pair of shorts. It's going to motivate you to work out more. And then one other one, just because, is put your clothes out the night before. Like literally, if you're struggling and you're like, oh, I don't even know what to wear, I just can't. Literally, before bed, put those clothes out. If you go to an office, pack your bags and put your clothes in there and go to the gym right after, even in between lunch. You know, again, the 5-minute rule, take the stairs, walk to and from the office. I literally like created my whole virtual program, Don't Sweat It Alone, based on the concept of like
Shameless plug. Come on.
yeah, absolutely. For that reason, right? Like, so you don't have to travel to the gym. So you can literally sign on. Like, the travel time is an excuse. Worrying about what you look like is an excuse. Sign on, do a workout for 10 minutes, sign off, hit another 10 minutes later. You know what I mean? Like, that's really one of the main reasons I did create it, because I do train people who have the craziest busy schedules in different time zones or in hotel rooms. They don't have the equipment, right? It's really forming a mindset of no excuses.
That's the main thing, right? Is no matter what, at least trying to get in some form of exercise to retain the habit, like you talked about. It's so important because I don't think it's a time thing. It's a motivation thing for a lot of people. I think it's like a habit. You have to get into the habit of just doing something, and preparation and preparing. Like you talked about, like setting your clothes out, right? You talked about like making sure to just start with 5 minutes. Like that's preparing you to know that you're going to get some form of movement in that day, whether it's 5 minutes or whether it's 2 hours, like just something.
Sorry, side note. I said you can also stack it. So like a little other tip that I like to do is like do something you enjoy after your workout or right before. Do you know what I mean? So you're like now associating exercise, if you've had this kind of push from it, that you will want to do it more.
Yeah, it's a great point because it's almost like that positive reinforcement.
Yeah. Until you have that association of enjoyment with exercise, you have a negative association, right? And I think a lot of people have that, and it's understandable.
Funny side note, when I got out of jail and I was still running, I was still smoking cigarettes. So
Yeah. My God, I give you credit.
I would wait until I got done the run. I'm like, now I can have a cigarette.
See? Like, and as crazy as that sounds, no,
It's
it
a horrible
makes
habit. It's a horrible habit.
terrible habit, but also great example. I hate to say it, but it is. You're like, okay, great. I finished my run. I can have my cigarette now, right? Like maybe let's swap that cigarette out for like a protein shake that tastes delicious. I know that's the first thing my mind went to. How about you? Do people ever ask you, like, what's a tip that you give?
For helping people stay disciplined.
Yeah, let's hear one.
I mean, there's a couple, right? I think I always say like, choose your suck. Like it sucks to go to the gym when you don't feel like it. It sucks to eat good, 80 to 90% of the time. Like it can suck. It can be hard, right? It sucks to lift a weight that maybe isn't as much as the person next to you at times, right? Like I can go on and on with these examples of some of
That's funny, actually. That's such a dude comment. Like, I mean that the nicest way. But yeah, that's really funny. I'm glad I asked you that. That's funny. Yeah.
The reason I bring that up is because people compare themselves often in the gym. And I think one of the things that prevents people from going to the gym is they're curious on what other people are going to say about them based on the exercises they're doing or their weight they're lifting or whatever, which we all know nobody cares. And so that all sucks, going back to my original point. What also sucks is sitting on your couch in the same place 3 months from now.
Yes, there it is.
Being like, gosh, I wish I would have kept going. I wish I wouldn't have worried about what other people thought of me. I wish I would have just set my alarm 30 minutes. Or I wish I would have just swapped all that soda for water. Like I wish, right? Like that's hard too. And now you're living with a form of regret and you've lost time, right? And the other thing I remind people to do, there's a couple things. I love
Can I throw out a really quick, like, just do it?
Yeah. Sometimes you got to play hurt, man. Like there's going to be days. I don't mean like if you go out and tear your ACL that you should go and run the next day. I mean, there's going to be freaking days where your sleep is off. There's going to be days where you feel like shit mentally. There's going to be days where you feel off, that you just have to go in and do it. And even though you don't feel 100%, doesn't mean that you can't give 100%.
Or show up. Just show up sometimes.
And I think one of the biggest lies that is fed to people is that trainers like love exercising. I honestly, there's a lot of days I just don't even feel like going to the gym. There's days I'm like, God, this is the last thing I want to do right now is go to the gym. It has nothing to do with like the exercises I'm about to do. It's just like, man, I'm freaking tired. I'm stressed. Like I just got rejected or whatever. Like whatever it is, I'm like, I don't feel like being here. But I know that
he doesn't like spaghetti carrots.
I know they were kind of gross. Actually, no, and you just learn to realize that the days that you don't feel like doing it are the days that you know you need to. So then you feel like afterwards you have some like aha moment where you were like, man, like I'm really glad I pushed through, because then that translates into other areas of your life. The last thing I'll say, and then I want you to tell people where to find out more about your program and to connect with you online, is I think it's really important for people to set like non-weight goals, because like how many times do you hear people, they're like, well, I'm not losing weight. And then the scale is their only metric. And we know that there's a lot physiologically that we can't control as it relates to the scale.
I have a thing like where I tell my clients, don't think about the scale, think about how you feel. That's like one of my main things. Like that's one of my main philosophies, and how you feel will reflect ultimately the results.
Right. Yeah. And I use adherence too as a way to help people feel better about themselves, where I'm like, all right, like, look at you. Like you have shown up to the gym 3 days a week for the last 6 months, and you haven't shown up to the gym at all before that for like 15 years. Like celebrate that. Or asking them like, well, how are your relationships? Like, oh, they're typically, of course, if somebody's feeling better physically, I mean, the relationships most of the time are going to be better. How's their energy? And you just start to like get them to realize like, dang, like I'm feeling a lot better. And I'm like, all right, if you decide to quit right now, you're automatically counting yourself out of the game. But I'm like, if you're still in the game, you can still freaking play, and don't negotiate yourself with the fundamentals. You know that if you continue to drink enough water, get enough sleep, like, control your calories in the right way, eat the right foods, like exercise, do all those things, that eventually the scale will move in whatever direction you want it to move if you stay disciplined. But I think the reason I say this, because a lot of times people use the scale as their main metric, when really that's just a byproduct of all the other things that happen as a result of working out.
Yeah, I'd like to say this for both of us. Do not let the scale discourage you. If you are listening to this and you are, starting a fitness journey, like that is the main thing you should not focus on. Doug and I said it first.
We said it first. And if you see Jenna in the gym, don't get too close to her, because she will push you away.
Only if you're in my line of fire.
Yeah. So Jenna Willis, this has been awesome. This has been fun. I've enjoyed it a lot. If people want to learn more about you, they want to find you on social media, they want to check out your programs, where can they do that?
You can find me on Instagram. It's Ms. Jenna Willis. If you want to check out any of my programs, all you have to do is go to don'tsweatitalone.com, in which I have my online virtual gym, and I also have a 90-day bridal program, and I also offer one-on-one virtual programs as well that include full nutrition.
Sweet. Well, I will make sure to include the links to all that stuff in the show notes. And for those listening, what I want you to do, what I invite you to do, is to share a takeaway. Maybe it was something that you enjoyed from just our banter early in the conversation. Maybe it was just the realness that Jenna portrayed in our conversation. Maybe it was something she said about the acting scene. Maybe it was something she said about comparison, or even something we just talked about with regards to health and fitness. Whatever it was, tag Jenna and tag myself, because we'd love to hear your feedback. And we once again thank you for listening to this episode of The Adversity Advantage. I'm your host, Doug Bopst. We'll see you next time.